If you want to cook for yourself, save money, and also be healthy, these are some of my favorite pantry staples to achieve these goals. I'll have a full list in the description below of all of these items and where you can find them. So this is actually what I happened to have in my pantry. This morning I had an idea to make this video, and without going to the store to restock or buy anything, I just laid out all of the essentials in my pantry that were cheap, healthy, and delicious and put them all on the table. I'm only really missing like one or two things that I would ordinarily think are essential in a pantry. So let's break these items down one at a time. Now the first category is oil. This is just your generic vegetable or canola oil. I always get it in bulk because it is pretty much always cheaper if you buy a lot of it. This has a very, very long shelf life. It's not really gonna go bad, it's not gonna go funky on you, and this is nice all-purpose cheap oil. This is olive oil, and it is a lot more expensive than regular vegetable or canola oil, but it has a lot of health benefits to it, and it also tastes really good. I would only recommend adding olive oil if you know that you're going to use olive oil a lot, because it does kind of go off and funky after a few months in your pantry. Also take note of the price per ounce when you're buying this in the store, because this, I remember, was actually cheaper than larger versions of it because it was on sale. Next thing you're gonna want is some vinegar. This is apple cider vinegar. I think it is the best all-purpose vinegar. And when I say all-purpose, I mean not only for cooking, it makes a wonderful household cleaner if you dilute it with water. Buy it in a giant jug like this. It's super cheap and it'll keep basically forever. Bulk soy sauce is great because it has a really long shelf life and it is a big umami bomb to just about anything you add it to. Even if you're not super into Asian cooking, soy sauce is definitely worth having. The next item is sugar. You may be wondering, what is sugar doing in a list of pantry ingredients that are healthy? But sugar is incredibly cheap, and it's like salt. If you add just a pinch of it to a dish, it can really heighten it and make it taste a lot better. And let's be serious, are you gonna have no sugar at all in your diet? And here we have all-purpose flour. This is all-purpose and it has so many uses, and I highly encourage you to get into baking if you want to save money. I bake my own bread a lot, I bake my own cookies and cakes, which aren't admittedly healthy, but they might be healthier than the grocery store alternative or the processed food alternative. Flour is ridiculously cheap. Buy big bags of it, keep it in containers like this, lasts forever, is really inexpensive, and a really good way to extend your meals. And with that in mind, baking powder. It's very inexpensive, lasts quite a while, and it's pretty much essential for any kind of baking where you want a rise to happen. I also make yeasted breads, but if you're new to bread making and baking in general, this is a lot easier to work with. The next must-have for me is tea, preferably bulk tea or loose leaf tea. If you are one of those people that drinks your caffeinated beverage outside of the home every day, you're wasting a lot of money. If you make it at home, it's so much cheaper. And since tea happens to be my vice, tea is what I stock up on. If you like coffee, get coffee. The next item is a grain that you cook in water, and my grain of choice is rice. It's pretty universal, you can find it everywhere, it's very cheap, and it's quite nutritious. This is how cultures all over the world have been extending their meals for years, getting more mileage out of them for less money. I have here just long grain white rice, long grain brown rice. I have other rices in the pantry, but I think if you're gonna stick to two, just a white and a brown rice are a very good start. I also recommend cornmeal. This is great for making your own cornbread. It's a very nutritious way of extending your soups and stews and turning them into a hearty meal versus a small snack. This is cornstarch. It's not necessarily healthy, but it is cheap and it thickens sauces really nicely. This is oatmeal. It's a very healthy grain. You can cook it for breakfast, or you can add it to all kinds of breads or cookies to add fiber and extra nutrition to them. Bulk legumes should definitely be in your pantry if you're trying to save money and be healthier. These are chickpeas and these are black beans. Get whatever kinds of legumes you actually can stand eating. Don't think, oh, I'm just gonna buy a bunch of beans and then I'll eventually like them. I buy my beans dried instead of canned because they taste so much better and they're usually a lot cheaper this way. You have to plan ahead a little bit, but it's very little hands-on cooking time to cook your own beans from scratch. If you are trying to save money and you do not have any potatoes in your pantry, you gotta change that. I am actually not the biggest fan of potatoes. I like them okay, but I don't love them. But they are incredibly cheap and they last a super long time. And they're pretty good for you compared to other things that are this cheap. They're also extremely versatile. You can use them in so many different ways. So potatoes, and always get them in bulk like this. Any kind of dry pasta is pretty essential in a pantry, even if you're not trying to save money. It's a really easy way to make a quick meal, and it's quite cheap. You may wonder why I included ramen in this list, because while it is cheap and maybe delicious to some people, it's not really healthy. I usually remove the flavor packet from this, and I just use the noodles. And while the noodles themselves are pretty much void of any nutritional value other than just carbohydrate calories, they are a wonderful way of making a cheap stir-fried noodle and cheap vegetable dish with your cheap soy sauce. And I have a recipe for that, which I am linking down below. I love garlic. It makes everything taste so much better, and it's actually not that expensive compared to other herbs and spices that you might get. While I personally have tons of spices in my pantry, spices aren't really that cheap, and they don't really add that much nutritional value. But garlic is one of those seasoning agents that actually isn't that expensive. And while we are on the subject of seasoning, salt and pepper. These are very basic, I know, but just salt and pepper alone can add so much flavor to your dishes. This is cocoa powder. And while usually cocoa powder is added to sugary desserts that are not healthy, sometimes we need a little sweetness in our lives, and I like to make my own cocoa from scratch that uses a lot less sugar than the cocoa from a mix. Or I make my own mochas at home with this and instant espresso powder, and it's a lot cheaper than Starbucks. Along those lines, vanilla extract can add a lot of flavor, and it can make things taste sweet when you actually don't put sugar in them. I have found that a cup of warm milk with just a dash of vanilla extract tastes sweet, even though there's no added sugar. I always like to keep a little bit of dried milk on hand, just in case I'm baking something and I don't happen to have milk on me. So it's also a great way to enrich existing milk and just give it more protein and more nutrients to whatever you're cooking. And it's cheaper than fresh milk. Canned milk is, however, my preferred method of preserved milk. If you are addicted to adding cream to your coffee or your tea, this is a great substitute because it's a lot healthier and it's cheaper. So ignore the packaging on this. I usually do not get my popcorn like this with artificial buttery stuff processed in there. I usually just get my popcorn kernels whole and in bulk, and I make my own popcorn from scratch. That is actually one of the healthiest snacks that you can eat, is popcorn. I have this microwave popcorn because my boyfriend and I moved in together recently and he had a bunch of it, so I wanted to eat through this first before I restocked with the whole popcorn kernels. But yeah, if you want a healthy snack, popcorn is great and very cheap. What American pantry would be complete without peanut butter? This is a smaller jar. I believe it was probably like 2 for the price of 1 and was actually cheaper than the larger jars, but try to get a larger jar because it's going to be cheaper. Peanut butter is packed with protein and calories. It's very filling and it tastes really good. I do not buy very many canned goods because I don't like the way they taste usually. I don't like that weird metallic-y twang to it, but canned tomatoes is my one exception, and these guys are a lifesaver. Tomatoes are also umami bombs. If you add them to a soup, a sauce, a dish, it's just amazing. This giant can costs about $1, and from this giant can I can make a simple batch of spaghetti sauce that serves about 4 people. All I have to do is add a little garlic and a little Italian herbage and a dash of red wine, and it makes an amazing cheap meal. But yeah, I always have some canned tomatoes. Now we're coming up to some more niche pantry items that I don't think are necessarily essential to everyone, but these are essential to me personally because of my preferences in what I eat. This is polenta. I actually like having this mushy, sort of like grits, for breakfast, and it's so cheap. I am from California, so I love tacos, and if you make your own corn tortillas from scratch, they taste so much better. And they're also quite inexpensive. So this is masa mix. Just add water, a little salt, and press it with a tortilla press, and you have really, really good homemade corn tortillas. This is dried wakame. I've been nursing this bag for years, actually. Now you're gonna have to go probably to an Asian market to get a good deal on this, or to even find it, but I've also provided a link in case you don't have an Asian market or you don't feel like looking, provided a link so you can buy this online if you need to. But dried wakame. Wakame is so incredibly nutritious. It's a staple in a lot of Japanese cuisine, but you can incorporate it into your own cuisine. All you have to do is rehydrate it in water for just a little bit. It doesn't even take that long. And you can put it in soups. I like putting it in stir-fried noodles sometimes. That dish I was telling you about earlier with the ramen and the vegetables that's stir-fried with soy sauce, I like adding wakame to that. Actually, you can even make just instant ramen and add wakame and like frozen vegetables, and it actually becomes relatively healthy for not very much money. So if you haven't tried wakame, I recommend it. These are nori, or dried seaweed sheets, and if I bought these at an Asian market, and this pack had 100 sheets in it, and it cost me like $4. So don't buy this at a regular grocery store, buy it bulk. I provided a link down below. Or if you're lucky enough to live near a really good Asian market, buy it there. But yeah, this is great. It's full of nutrients and it lasts kind of forever in your pantry. And a really simple, cheap meal that Japanese people like to have is just rice with nori. And it's surprisingly satisfying. But of course, you can also use it to make homemade sushi, which if you use cheap ingredients inside the sushi, you can actually make sushi for pretty cheap at home. And this is a jar of tahini. It's kind of like peanut butter, except it's made with sesame seeds instead of peanuts. This is a key ingredient in hummus, which is something that I eat a lot because it is cheap, healthy, and delicious. And I have a link below to a video where I show you how to make hummus. But yeah, buy this in bulk and try to avoid buying it at a grocery store because it's gonna be a lot more expensive at your grocery store. So those were just some of my favorite pantry staples that are cheap, healthy, and delicious. For recipes that are cheap, healthy, and delicious, consider looking at my playlist, Cheap, Healthy, Delicious. And again, a complete list of everything that I went over and where to find these things is in the description below. Bye bye. Oh, my knees.